I'm recording this while I'm still in Taos, New Mexico. I've been here for about 2 months now, trying to find my way and test the waters, if you will, to see if this is the next place I want to call home. And I'm excited to say that after just one day of being here amongst the pine trees and the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, I said yes. This is where I want to live. I remember thinking to myself on my drive in, finally, I'm home. And with that simple decision, I'd love to tell you that everything started working out for me and falling into place. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Turns out, my time here in Taos had something else in mind for me: healing. That's not to say, though, that I haven't had some amazing synchronicities along the way, because I have. But first, before those came about, some healing had to happen. Healing sounds so amazing, lots of times, doesn't it? Like you are finally over what caused you the wounds in the first place. The sun starts to shine again and everything is rainbows. But as Dolly Parton wisely said, the way I see it, if you want the rainbow, you gotta put up with the rain. And she couldn't have been more right. Healing is like a torrential downpour sometimes before you get to see that beautiful rainbow. But what many don't tell you is that when the rain comes, it pours, then lets you dry up for a bit, and then another torrential downpour begins, and it's time for more healing. This healing journey comes in waves, and just before you feel like you're going to drown in the sea, you learn how to weather that storm. At least this has been my experience with my healing thus far. For me, I feel like I've been on this healing journey since I was 23, and I'm 41 now. And I think it's going to continue for the rest of my life, too. Just when I think I've reached the healing summit and I can plant my flag of victory because I've made it to the top, and now I can start heading down the mountain, the clouds part and more things bubble up to the surface to be healed. And I see before me that there are a lot more mountains to climb and descend. What I'm realizing is, and maybe you've noticed this too in your own healing journey, that healing becomes more a way of living, with its ups and downs and all arounds. It doesn't really end. Rather than getting to a certain destination, the path of healing is pretty constant, kind of like a labyrinth where you spiral into the center and something changes and shifts within you and you've healed some part of you. But then you realize you have to walk that same path back out, revisiting what was brought up and then healing it at another level. I want to tell you a story, one that started when I was 7 years old. I used to play soccer and I was quite talented at it when I was young. So much so that I was sought after by a coach to play on his team. It wasn't anything big or like the big leagues or anything like that, but I remember feeling really excited to be asked to be on his team. In one of the practices we had, I remember overhearing the coach on the sideline talking to one of the parents about how skilled I was, pointing out some of my specific skills on the field. And that's where the memory always ended, or so I thought. As it turns out, there was more to this story that I only recently uncovered. You see, throughout my life, I've always dimmed my light down so that others can shine their light. I would often do this at my own expense, too. Never with malice did they take their spot in the limelight, or even ask for it. I would just make a conscious decision that I didn't want to take opportunities away from anyone, so I would step aside and let them shine and do their thing. Here's where it gets interesting, though. During a recent connection with my guides, I unlocked the rest of this story. That memory always stopped at the part where I overheard the coach singing my praises. However, there was a part of the memory that I hid away. Because the coach would use me as an example of what to do in many of our practices, I was criticized and made fun of by my teammates and by their parents too. I'm sure my teammates were probably jealous that I was getting attention, but at 7, I didn't understand what jealousy was. When the rest of that memory bubbled up to the surface, at first, I thought I was surely making it up. But I checked with my intuition and it told me yes, this did happen. I'm not making it up. And here's the powerful decision I made about myself at that moment when I was 7 years old. I vowed to never stand out again. I told myself at 7 years old I would never shine so brightly or be so successful at something that others have the opportunity to put me down, make fun of me, or criticize me. So from that moment on, I dimmed my talent and my light. This was a very old wound that I hid away in my subconscious that I didn't even know existed. I always had a sneaking suspicion that something was there blocking me from creating the success I so desperately wanted in every aspect of my life. But it wasn't until I started working with a certain crystal called aragonite that I finally was able to unlock this memory and bring it to light so I could heal this wound from so long ago. Some wounds are like that from our past, and they have a way of keeping us from truly healing and being our true, natural selves. These deeper hidden wounds have only just started coming to the surface for me too. And I feel like I have only amplified this healing process as I started telling people that I'm a healer. It was like the universe said, yes, finally, she's being her true self. This is who she really is. Yay. Okay, now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. And this is where the real healing work begins. Let's bring up all the things she's tucked away and start healing them. And while that sounds like the universe is celebrating in my pain, I know that's not the case. My guides and angels are only lifting me up at this time and fully supporting me every step of the way. I'm learning that in order to be a true healer, you gotta dig up a lot of stuff and let it come to the surface in order to heal. And it's not an easy road. In fact, it's really, really messy. The image that comes to mind is, let's say you buy a house from the 50s. It's old, but it has good bones, so you're excited to start the renovations. You decide to start in one of the bedrooms. It has some floral-looking wallpaper, probably from the 80s or so, but you think, surely this isn't going to be so hard. Until you start the process of removing that wallpaper, do you find another layer of funky wallpaper underneath. You're a bit discouraged, but think, okay, just one more layer and that should do it. But under that layer is another funky layer of wallpaper, and so on and so forth. It ends up taking you days to remove all this wallpaper until finally you get to the actual walls themselves. But they're not ready for paint. Nope, you gotta remove the glue, clean the walls, let them dry, and then prime the walls before you even start to paint. And that's kind of how healing is. It's a lot of work, and to be honest, it often feels way too overwhelming where you think to yourself that stuffing all these things down and keeping them hidden seems like a lot less work than bringing them to the surface to be healed. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while now, you know I made a major pivot this year where I started paving my own path. After my mom transitioned in 2020, my healing journey started to spiral inward. It brought up a lot of, let's just say, stuff with my family that I wasn't quite prepared for. I also was realizing that some latent gifts that I've always had started to become apparent, which to me was a bit disturbing because I didn't have my mom to physically talk to about this stuff anymore, because she was the one I would always go to for this type of stuff. I felt really alone and like the black sheep of the family because I came from a traditional Christian upbringing. So pivoting to being a healer and working with crystals on top of that, well, I'm sure you can imagine all the scary thoughts that can arise from that. I hid that I was a healer from most of the world because I wasn't strong enough to take any of the backlash or fallout from the people I wanted to accept me the most. But it wasn't until I created some distance and came here to Taos that I was really able to start and heal from these past 4 years after my mom transitioned. It was like my body, mind, and spirit needed the space, the room to breathe and allow the waves of healing to come. And one of those wounds that came up to the surface was resentment towards my family. Not a pretty one. Resentment that I couldn't feel like I could just be myself and they would accept me for who I was. Resentment for being the sole caretaker for both of my parents all these years. But the thing that allowed me to release this resentment and finally begin to feel steady and secure in who I've always been was forgiveness. My family didn't ask for forgiveness. I honestly doubt that they even knew I was resentful towards them in the first place, because I was really good at stuffing those feelings aside. But I knew I was, so I had to learn how to truly let this stuff go in order to heal these wounds from the past 4 years. Sometimes you gotta start with what's right in front of you, the most recent hurt right on top. It's not fun because it's most likely still very raw and real. And when I started to forgive my family and forgive myself too, that's when the deeper wounds that were hiding for decades came up to the surface to be healed too. This healing work is full of layers, and at times you feel like you're journeying to what seems like the deepest part of you, while simultaneously working on a very recent hurt too. There's not an exact science to this healing process either. I wish there was. I wish there was a formula that I could tell you about that could make healing easier, but there simply isn't. You have to do the work. However, I will tell you this. If you're on your healing journey now, and you're spiraling inward and down to what seems like the darkness, maybe you feel as if you've hit rock bottom, and there's nowhere else to go and no one else to turn to. I want you to know it is in the darkest moments of our lives that we are invited to learn how to see in the dark, because it's there that your true inner light is able to shine. Don't give up. Embrace the warmth of your light that shines from within. Take comfort in the fact that your soul chose this knowing, without a doubt, you can handle it. You don't have to go through this healing journey alone either. I'm here with you, walking right beside you. That's why I wanted to share these stories, and I will continue to share more, so you know you're not the only one going through this. And I want to invite you to join me to come listen to my next episode, because I'll be sharing some of the tools I've been using that have really helped ease this healing journey and brought so much guidance and comfort into my life. And I hope that they will for you too. Remember, our job in this lifetime is not to shape ourselves into some ideal we imagine we ought to be, but to find out who we already are and become it. Dr. Wayne Dyer. I'm sending you so much healing light and love. Until next time, my dear amazing adventurer. Ciao. Besos. Mwah.